Hello there. Welcome back to Bearcats Mean Business, the official podcast of the University of Cincinnati's Carl H. Lindner College of Business. My name is Grant Freaking, Manager of College Communications and Marketing at Lindner. I'm excited today to be joined by Rachael Spoon, a 2021 Lindner graduate who has carved out her own path as an entrepreneur. Rachael is here to share how her upbringing and education has shaped her ambitions, how she landed on Lindner and the University of Cincinnati, and how a passion for the wedding industry prompted her to start her own business, Rae Co. Weddings. Welcome, Rachael. Thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Thanks for making the trip up from Tennessee. I like to start at the beginning with guests of the show. What was your upbringing like? Were you from around here? How did you where are you from?
If we're taking it all the way back to the beginning,
Okay.
I was born in Boston, Massachusetts.
Oh, okay.
Until I was 7 when my family moved here to technically Loveland, Ohio,
Okay.
where I lived until 2021 and then moved to Clarksville, Tennessee with my now husband.
Okay.
I have 4 siblings. I'm the oldest of 4 and the only daughter. So there's Michael. He is actually here at UC studying computer science.
Okay.
David is in Covington working at Fidelity Investments, and Matthew is in high school looking to play soccer in college. So.
Okay. How was it being the only female amongst 3 younger brothers?
They tease me.
Yeah.
They say that I'm the spoiled only daughter. I think there's pros and cons to being the eldest. I have a lot of the oldest daughter tendencies. I'm a perfectionist. Maybe a little bit of a goody two-shoes, but
Yeah, a little bit of Enneagram type 1 sort of behavior. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. So what was your draw to UC and Lindner? Was it pure location? Was it academics? What was that? Wasn't too long ago for you.
No, it wasn't. So when I was in high school applying to colleges, I didn't realize how profoundly one school could shape my life. And so although I admit that UC wasn't at the top of my list at the time, not because I had anything against it, but because I didn't really understand what I wanted or what I needed in a college experience. Looking back, I'm convinced that it was all part of God's plan for me to end up here. And the community, the values, the opportunities, who I became, who I grew into, everything at UC made me who I am today. So if I could go back in time, I'd choose UC 12 times out of 10. Even though it wasn't maybe my initial want for my college experience.
Right. Sure. Yeah. I think there's no way of knowing what's ahead of you when you're in that really overwhelming, it's your first big adult decision, right, is choosing a college for the most part. And so it's how can you know what's ahead of you? And we're certainly glad you landed on UC. Take me back to your beginnings here at Lindner and UC. How did you know you wanted to do entrepreneurship right away?
I did not.
Yeah, most people don't know what major is. That's completely normal. So how did you find your way to that?
I knew I wanted business, so I came in as business undecided.
Sure.
And then I think it was probably my freshman year, I had this sort of questioning of what do I really want to do with my life and what are my goals and what are my interests? And as I sat down and thought about, I love interior design and I'm really organized and I like the idea of logistics and making things efficient. I landed on operations management, and then after taking an operations management class, decided maybe that wasn't the best route for me. And I think it was my sophomore year, came up with this idea for a one-stop shop venue where there were multiple themed venues all sitting on one piece of land, so that I could cater to multiple people's styles, and in the process sort of landed on the wedding industry as the ultimate goal. And then entrepreneurship felt like just a no-brainer next step. That was it. And then I took my first entrepreneurship class and had this, oh my gosh, this is me moment.
That must have been pretty fulfilling, satisfying, and a little bit of sigh of relief too.
Absolutely.
A little bit more than the OM class, which it's great for some people, not great for others. I think I'm with you. OM would be a little too much for me.
I love the efficiency and logistics of what I do, but as far as operations management is concerned, I just don't think that's not my personality.
Mm-hmm. Right. What other sort of touch points were there along the way at Lindner that sort of helped you get to where you're doing, not only I guess what you're doing now, but fulfill your entrepreneurship, complete the entrepreneurship circle at Lindner? Was it certain classes, interactions with professors, clubs, organizations? What sort of other stuff fits in there?
I have to give almost all of that credit to my academic advisor, Brittany.
Mm-hmm. Brittany Wagner.
Yeah. She when I had the idea for the venue, I started talking about it to all of my professors. I wrote all my papers about it. It became everything. I carried around this little book with me all the time, everywhere, so that if I ever had an idea, I could just jot it down, no matter where I was or what I was doing. And in one of our meetings, I think maybe swapping my major, and we started talking about it. And so then every time I was going back to her, we were having more conversations about it. And when I graduated in 2021, she got engaged, and she reached out and said, "Do you want to plan my wedding?" And I looked at her like she was crazy, because I've never done anything like that before. I knew I wanted to maybe go into that industry, but the idea had evolved then, and there were all sorts of other things going on, and I was graduating and didn't exactly have a plan. And I looked at her and I said, I've never done that. Are you sure you want me to plan your wedding? And she was like, "Yeah, I think you'd be great at it." And so I did. And it was, the only way that I can even think to describe it is electric. There was electricity coursing through my veins the entire wedding day. I loved the chaos of the behind the scenes and the organizing all of the details, sort of a project management, if you want to think about it, but organizing all the details to get her to the wedding day. And that just kickstarted Rae Co. So from there, it's been wedding planning. And then to her credit too, I think it's setting me up for success when I do open the venue. And I'm going to have experiences and connections and real data and real clients to draw from when I'm doing that in the future.
So you're almost like your most impactful experiential learning opportunity came like right after you graduated, but hey, you still got it though.
I have to, I mean, that was like the biggest one. That was why I started Rae Co. So that I have to give her credit there. But all of my professors were incredible. I think when I look back at my time at UC and I talk to people, I talk about my professors and my mentors, not the football games or the, extracurricular or whatever. It really is the people. And it was my time here at Lindner that shaped my entire college experience. That's what I look back with the most fondness.
And that's why you went wandering around the building before you met me today. So yeah, I'm glad it holds a special place for you. So let's go back to some more of your activities within college. You were also in the Ohio Army National Guard, right? So tell me about that experience.
I enlisted straight out of high school with the intent of joining ROTC here at UC, and then served for 6 years after that. So just got out in 2023. That's not just. Got out in 2023. I drove trucks. I was an 88 Mike, so a motor transportation operator. And that was once a month weekends and 2 weeks in the summer.
So what was the impetus behind that? Is that something you always wanted to do? Is it something different? Is it familial connection to the armed forces as well, maybe, that kind of drew you in?
A little bit. We have a joke in my family that it is the family business. My mom was an engineer officer. Okay. My dad was an armor officer. Both grandfathers served. And my husband is in as well. And then my traitorous brother who joined the Navy instead of the Army.
She said with disdain. So let's get back to your business. Where was it at the beginning, and sort of where is it at now? Kind of give me like the two-sided view there.
So the beginning is Brittany.
Is Brittany, yeah.
And then when I realized that I had this aha moment during her wedding of, oh my gosh, this is something that I want to do. And so that was where I started. And I think it was probably pretty slow at the beginning. I didn't realize when you're in the entrepreneurship major, they talk about all these startups and this is how you get funding, and you talk to angel investors and you do these things. But when you're actually starting and you have this, what feels like a very small idea, there's a lot more to it than just like going to find an investor or pitching your startup and getting crowdfunding. And so I built Rae Co. all on my own. I did my website. I made my own logo. I, paid for the Google ads and built those out and researched and did everything. And I could not have done it without the support of my family and mentors that I have. But it was all me. It wasn't this, big team effort where I had this established business to build off of. So I don't know if that answered your question.
It does. Now that leads me to doubt. Tell me about I'm sure you had moments of doubt along the way too, where like, is this worth it? Is this worth all my time? I'm sure you're spending, donating lots of weekend time to this around your otherwise busy schedule. Talk to me about doubt.
I think that's a normal part of any entrepreneur's journey. And I do have these moments of, am I qualified to be doing this? And am I actually good at doing this? And then the wedding day comes around and I have the aha moment again.
Yeah, you shed the imposter syndrome.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Nice.
I think even failure is not just a part of success, it's a necessary part of success. And I had stuff that happened at UC that it's kind of embarrassing, but I failed algebra like twice. And it took a third time to pass that class in order to even be able to graduate. So it's not just, oh yeah, failure is a part of success. It is a necessary part of success. And every single wedding teaches me something new every single time. And maybe the couple doesn't know about it, but something goes wrong every time. And I have to adapt and improvise and overcome those things. So,
right. I'm wondering about how you acquire your clients. Not everyone, of course, is like a former academic advisor waiting to be married to test you out. So how has it maybe evolved from, is it easier now for you? How did like the word get spread, aside from like, did the Google ads work? I'm interested in how you acquired your clients over the years.
At the beginning, a lot of it was word of mouth. And then when I started the Google ads, that really helped. They're very complicated, so I am now paying a digital marketing agency to run those for me and working with a consultant behind the scenes to fix my automations and workflow processes and my overall planning process to make me more efficient, which I love. But there's been a definite, like the beginning was slow, and I did 2 weddings my first year and then booked 5 in my second year, and now I have 3 in just May of this year. So there's definite growth. There's always things changing and moving and evolving, and always small adjustments being made. But
do you run into other entrepreneurs, whether it's in the wedding industry, often, or maybe outside of it? And I'm curious if like you hear any feedback from them, or like, you kind of give them a look like, oh, you're kind of going through it right now too. Is anything like that?
I think almost all of the wedding vendors that I interact with are entrepreneurs. Yeah. They're photographers who started small, or florists who started in just their house and have grown their businesses. And so there's a lot of that sort of, oh, I really get what you're going through. And there's so many weird, complicated things about running a business that you don't even realize. Like filing for my LLC. This is a weird thing. I had to call the Department of Revenue to figure out where I needed to get my business license. And you need one for the county and the state and the city. Like there's weird things that you just don't realize. And I have to give credit here to one of my mentors, Jeff Heineken. I met him through UC actually. And he has helped so much with all of those small little things here and there. And then his legal expertise has helped me make sure that my business is protected, both from a planning perspective, but then as an LLC.
You mentioned earlier, part of like your grand dream is the venue. Let's hear more about that.
Oh, well, that idea has evolved quite a bit since its original conception. Okay. But we're actually working right now. I have funding, and we probably later this year will purchase land in close to Nashville, Tennessee. We're looking for about 100 acres. And then there's going to be multiple venues that are all themed differently. So there'll be, the generic sort of warehouse type barn space, blank space, really pretty, but a blank slate. Sure. And then there'll be other themed venues. And I've taken inspiration from like my travels and places I've been and things I've seen. So there'll be, I want castle ruins that look like they were pulled straight out of Ireland, and an Italian villa that looks like it was pulled out of Tuscany. And so I think we're going to start with 3 venues. and then eventually get to more than that. But scale doesn't exist in the wedding industry. When you do a wedding, for me, it's a 16-hour day. So I can't do more than one wedding in one day. And a lot of venues operate that same way. So there's one venue and there's one ceremony location and there's one reception location, and they're stuck. So then they charge couples to turn the string lights on, or to use the fancy chairs, or to use their linens, or whatever it is. And I experience this with a lot of my couples, is this frustration that the venue was supposed to be X amount and instead it's X plus, 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 plus.
Right, yep.
And so the idea of my venue has evolved into this thing where we can achieve scale and we don't have to charge couples X plus, plus, plus. We can just charge them X. So because there are 3 weddings happening in one day in 3 different locations on the land, we don't have to charge them to turn the string lights on or to use the tables or the fancy chairs or whatever it is. And so I'm hoping to revolutionize the wedding industry. That feels like a very scary and big and daunting thing to say, but it was one of the first things I said when I was starting out and had this idea for the venue was I want to revolutionize this industry because it just doesn't exist this way anywhere.
Yeah. What's the feedback you've gotten on that particular idea from maybe couples that you've helped out or other peers in the industry?
All of my couples have said that they wish that it was already open so that they could get married there. And industry professionals have said that they love the idea. And I get a lot of like, oh, be careful of noise or be careful of, this or that, things that they've experienced. But I've also taken that feedback, and our venue is going to be built with so much intentionality. So a lot of wedding venues that you go to, it's like an old something that they turned into a venue, or they had one wedding there because somebody liked the space and then they thought, oh, this is kind of easy. We can just do this and make money off of it or whatever. We're building these venues from the ground up with every single detail well thought out from a client perspective, from a guest experience perspective, and from a vendor perspective. Mm-hmm. So I go to venues and there's nowhere for me to put my stuff. So I've put it in bridal suites, and I've put it under the DJ stand, and I've stuck it under the sink at the bathroom. I've put it in the kitchen. Like there's nowhere for me to have a touchdown space. So in all of our venues, we'll have a touchdown space. We'll have a large enough bridal suite that girls aren't stacked on top of each other, and a groom suite because so often grooms are just forgotten.
Or wandering around.
Venues. Yeah, they wander or they get stuck in some small closet and they're like, here, hang out here for a little while. So they're getting ready at a different location. And I think that I like the togetherness of it all happening in one place and it being done well. So
what advice would you give to current or prospective students? Tips, tricks of the trade? Maybe not tricks of the trade, but maybe ease them of like the same concerns that you had about your life as a freshman or a sophomore here at Lindner, and sort of propelling them on their own journey.
My initial reaction to you saying that was, it was so much harder than I thought it was going to be. I had this grand idea of, I'm going to graduate college and I'm going to start the venue immediately and I'm just going to get all the money because this is such a great idea. But I'm now 4 years out of college and only just now making these larger strides on the venue. But I think that my advice is to lean into like mentors and building a group of people around you that support you and pour into you and are excited about your excitement and your passions. Because I've been told no, but then I can turn around and someone says, well, they said no because they don't understand or they don't see the vision or whatever it is. And I don't think it's blind optimism. I think it's having a good support team. And it's more than just, oh, my mom says it's a great idea.
Right. Yeah. Maybe some cheerleaders, but some like realistic cheerleaders.
Absolutely.
Right. Let's close with this. What's your favorite memory at Lindner and UC?
That is kind of an easy answer for me.
All right.
And it is my junior year of college, which actually ended up being when COVID started.
Yeah, so we're off to a curious start here.
It was one of my entrepreneurship classes, and everyone in the class had to come up with an idea. We had to pitch the idea to the class, and then we voted on only 5 or 6 of them. So I pitched my idea. My idea was selected. And then we had to build a team, create an actual product, and sell that product. So it was for Refresh, the Responsible Alcohol Aid, which was specific supplements chosen to help remedy hangover symptoms, quote unquote. And so when we began that semester in January of 2020, we had all of our, we knew who our market was, and we were going to go to bars, and we were going to hand them out as people were walking in and get them to buy them and all this stuff. And then March hit when COVID happened, and we stopped coming to school, and we turned everything to online, and we had to pivot and figure out who our new market was and how we were going to sell this product, because at that point we had already bought everything. We had to figure out how to assemble these little packets and get people to buy them. And I think COVID ended up being really helpful for that, because people were home, and so they were working from home. And so we sold them, I think we put stuff out on Facebook and put stuff out on Instagram. And so people ended up reaching out, and we beat this current, at the time it was the current record for the most gross sales of anybody in that class ever. I don't know if we're still the record. I hope so.
You have to check with your professor.
Fingers crossed. I'd have to ask.
Yeah.
But is definitely a favorite memory. I look back on that, and that's what I talk about when people ask me about my time as a student in the entrepreneurship major. And then as a sort of a culmination of my 4 years, I was nominated by my professors as the Outstanding Student of the Year or Entrepreneurship Student of the Year my senior year. And that was, I think, one of my proudest moments, because they see the potential. They see that I have what it takes to be an entrepreneur, and they saw the drive and the focus and the everything else from the past 4 years. So
that's awesome. What great memory. All right. Well, my thanks to Rachael Spoon for dropping by the Lindner podcast studio today. If you enjoyed today's episode, please consider subscribing or leaving a 5-star review for Bearcats Mean Business on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. Thanks for tuning in. Go Bearcats.